Hello everyone, and welcome to my channel. Today, we're going to look at another horrific situation with you. It was late in the night. The streets were dark and mostly empty. A young woman ran out the door of her house, leashed her dog, and jumped behind the wheel of the parked car. The automobile accelerated and disappeared into the city's darkness. The young runaway had been looking forward to this night for 4 years. Today, we'll go to Lawrence, Kansas, to discover about this young woman's life and what made that specific night the happiest for her. So, if you want to learn more about what happened, let's start at the beginning and share what we know. Lawrence, a small town with fewer than 100,000 residents, is one of the top 10 college towns. It's a fantastic location to live, with little criminal activity. However, this incident shattered the town's calm. On January 15, 2014, a young man called the police to report a troubling, strange noise at his neighbor's residence. Officers were dispatched to the address given. However, no one answered the door, and the house remained unoccupied. They looked around, and through the glass door in the backyard, they noticed a silhouette of a person. Once inside, the officers confirmed that there was no mistake. The silhouette actually turned out to be a human. On the living room floor, they were confronted with a terrifying scene. A middle-aged man was lying in a puddle of dried blood. His hands were chained, and his throat had been so badly sliced that he was almost decapitated. What began as a normal check evolved into a criminal probe, the motivations for which had to be discovered. The identity of the deceased was swiftly determined. Harold Sasko, 52, was a local entrepreneur and the proprietor of a pizza business chain. He was born on September 11, 1961 in Florida, the 10th of 12 children in his family. His relatives characterized him as a conscientious and organized individual who always took the lead in everything. Harold worked hard at the age of 14, dreaming of becoming a successful entrepreneur and running his own firm. After 2 years of education in Oklahoma, Harold worked as an administrator for a chain of pizza businesses in Texas, where he learned administration and saved money to fulfill his ambitions. In the 1990s, the Sasko family relocated to Kansas. Harold, the enterprising entrepreneur, launched his own pizzeria. Mr. Sasko's business was successful, and he quickly opened 2 more pizzerias in Topeka and Lawrence. But who could have done this to a decent guy, and might Harold have had a dark side that justified what happened to him? Investigators quickly discovered that Harold Sasko had been living with 19-year-old Sarah McLynn for the previous few years. However, she was not located at home and may have been the second victim of a terrible attack by an unknown criminal. Sarah might have been the last person to see Harold alive. But where did the girl disappear? In order to locate Sarah and solve the mystery of an adult man's relationship with a young woman, detectives had to piece together facts about the convoluted and covert relationships that had been kept hidden in the late Harold Sasko's home. Sarah Gonzalez McLynn was born in 1994 in Topeka, Kansas. She was a typical child, energetic, bright. The girl was open to new experiences and experimented with many interests. During her adolescence, she was harassed by a neighbor, which shook her mental state. Sarah was terrified by the violent behavior of the older man. She felt helpless. During this period, her parents' disagreements became more regular, escalating the situation at home and negatively impacting the girl's well-being. Sarah had to mature early in order to understand adult concerns But the immature psychology of a teenager did not produce the required results, and she began to drown her worries in drink. However, Sarah's drinking addiction provided little respite, and she attempted suicide due to a nervous breakdown. Following the attempt, she was hospitalized and treated at a psychiatric clinic for some time. Sarah wished to leave her parents' house, where she felt stifled by the toxic atmosphere created by parents who were unable to share their property during their divorce. She began saving money to rent a room and move out. During a period of depression, Sarah met an older man who reassured and restored her confidence. That was Harold. He conducted a youth mentorship program where he met Sarah, who eventually worked at one of his restaurants. By the age of 16, she was already taking orders at the pizzeria counter and meticulously saving money for her future. Sarah was happy at the time. She left her despised home for one where she felt needed. She met acquaintances and began a relationship with Harold. In turn, he became a second father to her, providing the love and care she desperately needed. Sarah told him about her issues in a private talk, and they moved him. Harold invited Sarah to live in with him temporarily until she found her own place. Sarah's mother opposed it, but the girl was resolute. After starting college, Sarah moved in with her mentor. Sarah believed that the imposed measure would not endure long. Harold paid for her studies. They had a good friendship and were close as father and daughter. For a long time, this was the situation. According to interviews with neighbors and witnesses, Harold was a source of comfort for Sarah following the troubles she had encountered in her family. She sought safety with an adult friend. Harold was both a mentor and a friend to her, despite their age gap. Following Harold Sasko's death, the police needed to locate Sarah McLean as soon as possible, as she could be in danger. Blood testing revealed that all of the blood belonged to the deceased, implying that Sarah was alive and could have been taken. During the hunt, it was learned that Sarah's biological father had reported her missing long before the news of Harold's death became public, but the police had been inactive, assuming adolescent maximalism and her frequent escapes from home. Detectives suspected that the young woman had also been the victim of an attack. Her search persisted. However, the investigation explored several ideas about the attack and crime. One of them involved robbery. The house inspection revealed that various valuables and things had been stolen. Closets were partially empty. Harold's money and firearms have also been stolen. There was anarchy everywhere. The majority of the clothes had been tossed out of the wardrobe. After gathering lists of stolen stuff, it was discovered that only Sarah's belongings were missing. Her iPad, phone, and automobile were discovered in the parking area at the house. For the detectives, this verified the young woman's abduction. Mr. Sasko's dog, Oliver, also vanished without a trace, but why would the abductor take him? The loss of the dog perplexed the investigators, who also noticed that Harold's automobile was missing from the parking lot. The license plate was checked in the database, and the police began an active search for the vehicle. By following all of the records from the city's surveillance cameras where the car could have been seen, they were able to pinpoint the direction of the suspected criminal, but the fuzzy frames prevented them from identifying him. Information regarding the stolen car and the probable criminal was relayed to surrounding posts along the possible routes, but no further details were received. The investigators did not spend any time while waiting for information on the car's movement. They actively questioned Sarah's friends and acquaintances, attempting to learn more about the unique relationship between the young woman and the mature man. Harold Sasko had 3 marriages at the time, but he was divorced and lived solely with Sarah. The fact that a 19-year-old lady was living as friends with a 52-year-old man was unusual, but no further information regarding Sarah and Harold's connection was available. Nobody had ever seen them as a pair. Sarah had her own room in Harold's residence. Could it be that this mature, well-off man truly became a second father and mentor to the young lost girl? It really appeared to be the case. Harold Sasko was regarded as a gentle, sensitive, and generous individual. His co-workers also stated that the employer and the employee had no close relation, and that the investigation was at a halt. Sarah McLynn remained missing after a critical 48-hour period. Investigators were perplexed, but resumed their hunt for the young woman. 3 days into the hunt, an unexpected phone call to Sarah's parents' home turned the detective's idea on its head. The promised call was brief. The caller waited for an answer before hanging up discreetly. The police, anticipating a call from the suspected abductor, were able to track it down immediately. The caller's location was verified as a 24-hour business at a petrol station in Bishop. When the police arrived to the scene and reviewed the security tape, they were surprised to see a female figure who looked very much like Sarah. The woman freely entered the store, made her purchases, made the call, and then left in Harold's automobile. Could it be conceivable that Sarah, whom the police were looking for as an abduction victim, on January 25, 2014, rangers at Everglades National Park in Dade County, Florida, discovered Sarah McLynn sleeping in a parked car with Oliver, Mr. Sasko's dog. Several knives, an axe, and Harold's revolver were discovered while searching the car. Sarah was taken back to Kansas on February 1, 2014, after waiving her extradition hearing in Florida, and she was booked into the Douglas County Jail. The vehicle was confiscated, and forensic analysis showed that the bloodied find was the weapon used in Harold Sasko's death. But what motivated such a heinous crime? During Sarah's interrogation, it was discovered that their relationship began as that of a father and daughter. He took care of her and informed everyone that she was his stepdaughter to avoid awkward questions. Sasko was aware of Sarah's strained connection with her parents. He was aware that she had been viciously assaulted by a man, leaving her with cigarette burn scars. She attempted suicide and was later diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder and depression. Harold vowed to take care of her, but the alleged refuge allowed unrestricted access to marijuana and alcohol. Cocaine and ecstasy were both available. He charged her rent, and she bought her own groceries. He eventually took control of everything she did. After roughly 6 months of living together, Harold expressed his love for her. Sarah refused him, but he persisted with his advances. He eventually demanded intimacy as a condition of her staying with him. Harold took her pay, claiming it as recompense for the money he spent on her daily needs. He threatened to sue if she left. Harold ridiculed and insulted her on a daily basis. Harold once told Sarah that she wasn't handsome enough and that guys liked women with more voluptuous form. He claimed that with such a look, she would never find true love or appeal to men. Sarah complained, but felt she had little option. He paid for her nose job and buttock implant. Following these surgeries, Sarah's debt to Harold climbed by $10,000. Her final payment from the restaurant was $265. He demeaned her and demanded complete submission. When Harold wanted closeness. Sarah became desperate and began drinking alcohol and using psychoactive medications. If she tried to struggle, he'd hold her down. Harold took advantage of Sarah's vulnerable position and frequently pressed himself on her, and she eventually agreed to a relationship with him at his dinner. Sarah slipped into a depression and sought refuge beneath Harold's alleged protection. She became more constrained and withdrawn. She suffered from victim syndrome and was frightened to abandon him or inform him. She saw only one way out of her moral quandary: end her partner's life. Sarah admitted that she made the decision 5 days before the incident. On January 14th, Harold returned home late. At one point, he asked Sarah to bring him some beer. Knowing that if he drank, he would force himself on her, she made the decision to act. She mixed crushed sleeping tablets into the beer. Harold eventually lost consciousness. Sarah secured his ankles and wrists with zip ties. She then used a hunting knife to inflict a serious wound on his neck. During the interview, Sarah said that she had second thoughts about killing him, but Harold was already bleeding out, so she felt compelled to finish what she had started. With renewed rage, she stabbed him in the neck repeatedly. Then Sarah had a shower, packed her belongings, and left in Harold's car with Oliver, the puppy she had cared for. She first traveled to Texas, then to Florida to see the water. That's where the Rangers held, and that the trial for Harold Sasko's death began on March 5, 2015, at the Douglas County Courthouse. In his opening remarks, Prosecutor Charles Branson informed the jury that Sarah McLynn painstakingly planned Harold Sasko's death. Lawrence Police Detective Robert Brown testified for the prosecution, demonstrating that Sarah McLynn conducted Google searches using the phrase vulnerable places on the neck before to the crime. She admitted to inflicting knife wounds on the victim before chopping his throat. When the investigator inquired why she ended Mr. Sasko's life, she said, "I wanted someone to die." Because of these comments, the trial concentrated on her ability to develop the intention to perform the conduct. However, in a private discussion with the court prior to the trial, Prosecutor Charles Branson indicated that it would be inappropriate for the jury to hear of Harold Sasko's cruel treatment of Sarah McLynn, and he purposefully left out this information. He considered that the specifics of the claims would be improper for the trial stage, since they would inspire sympathy for the defendant without providing any evidence. Branson did not want the years of domestic abuse to be public. Carl Cornwell, the defense attorney, agreed to the constraints on bringing evidence of inhumane treatment, which he could have submitted in court. Instead, he attempted to persuade the jury that Sarah was mentally disturbed and incapable of fully comprehending her act. Carl Cornwell suggested that Douglas County Judge Paula Martin should commit the accused, Sarah McLynn, to a state hospital rather than prison, and that if a prison sentence is imposed, she should be sentenced to 25 years due to her mental illness. However, Prosecutor David Melton objected to the defense's presentation of Sarah as a victim. He further stated that a clinical test at Lawrence State Hospital, an impartial institution, revealed that McLynn did not fit the criteria for dissociative identity disorder. The district judge reported that she had been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder and antisocial tendencies. According to the study, Sarah McLynn overstated her mental illness. In his courtroom presentation, the prosecution stated that the crime was conducted by a systematic and foresightful criminal who had planned it ahead of time and purposefully left her mobile phone behind to escape detection. In his closing address, Prosecutor Melton stated that he had never seen anything as heinous and horrible as the act committed against Harold Sasko, and that the defendant deserved a sentence ranging from 50 years to life in prison. According to Melton, some crimes are so vile and awful that they deserve severe punishment. He claimed that Sarah may have used another method, such as suffocation, overdose, or poisoned Sasko. However, the fact that McLean violently pierced Sasko's carotid artery with a long knife added to the severity of the deed. Addressing the court, the prosecutor stated repeatedly that she picked a knife to prolong the sensation of the deed, which she most likely loved. After reviewing the arguments, psychological assessments, requests from relatives, and letters to the court, Martin concluded that there is insufficient evidence to support commitment to a psychiatric facility rather than prison, and that the act was disgusting, barbaric, and brutal. Judge Paula Martin of Douglas County sentenced Sarah Gonzalez McLean to 50 years in prison. She must serve at least 50 years before being eligible for release, by which time she will be over 70 years old. Following the sentencing, Sarah apologized to both her own and Harold Sasko's family. Sarah has challenged the sentence, citing incompetent counsel. Meanwhile, the defense counsel began preparing a clemency petition, uncovering critical evidence of abuse and the evil side of Harold Sasko that had not been given to the jury during the trial. During the search for Sarah, a considerable number of important clues were disregarded. After all, the investigation's focus was on uncovering a crime against life rather than demonstrating domestic abuse. An examination of Harold Sasko's phone revealed that he had regularly expressed interest in child-oriented material. He downloaded hundreds of films to his phone and browsed X-rated websites about youngsters, teenagers, and zoophilia. He went to at least 20 websites where guys were or looked to be sexual with ladies who appeared to be sleeping. Police discovered a camera and flash drives on a desk in Sasko's bedroom. An investigator indicated that the photographs discovered on the flash drives revealed that Sasko and Sarah McLean were simply buddies who spent time together. The defense attorneys were not permitted to review the files. Sarah was surprised and perplexed when the proof of severe treatment was not presented in court. She refused to give up on proving that when it came to killing her adversary, she saw no other option for saving herself. On March 20th, 2015, after only 4 hours of deliberation, the jury found Sarah Gonzalez McLean guilty of first-degree premeditated homicide with aggravating circumstances, completely uninformed of the months of brutal treatment that preceded her heinous crime. Her lawyers are now hoping to get her out of prison by urging the governor to pardon her